Welcome back to Danielle O'Terry's Italy. In this episode, I want to discuss why right now, the end of 2025, is a really good time to start thinking about your 2026 trip. And I'm sure you're like, yeah, well, of course, I'm always thinking about my trip to Italy. I hate my job. But I invite you to do this specifically so that you can clarify your priorities before the calendar turns, before life gets hectic. And I want to give you the tools to plan with intention and confidence so that this trip becomes one of the most meaningful that you've ever taken. Now, so many of my clients come to me glazed over. That's the best way I can describe it. And they're glazed from having done way too much research. And they are afraid that no matter which choice they make, it's going to be the wrong one. And their sentences often begin with, I'm usually really good at planning trips, but I don't know why, for some reason, with this one, it's harder and I don't understand why. Here's the answer to that. There's too much information out there and you have no idea how to weigh it. But I do. So I'm going to help you. Now, before we get into my strategy, I have kind of a cool announcement. I'm going on a research trip next month, yes, October 2025, and I would like to invite you to come along. The trip starts technically in Naples just for a pickup, and then we're going right out to Cilento and we'll be there for 5 days. We will visit some of my favorite places, of course, the temples of Paestum. We'll make bread with Chef Mario Stellato and his grandmother. We'll visit one of my favorite vineyards, Tempa di Zoe. But we will also try out some new things because, like I said, this is a research trip. And we're going to really geek out on history in Salerno, where there is so much to explore, really to unravel in the best sense of the word. And there's really fantastic shopping there, especially for jewelry and clothes. So, those of you who want to join me, please do. And I'm also going to extend the adventure with 2 nights in Matera and then one last night in Naples, staying at Atelier Ines. So if you listen to episode 17, The Theater of Life in Naples, that's where we'll stay. Now, because it's the end of the season and last minute, this trip is really, really affordable. It's an opportunity that it would be impossible for me to replicate at any other time of year. There are right now, I think 4, maybe 5 spots that are taken, and I've got room for 10 total. So if you're interested, reach out to me right away. Just go online, see what flights are available. I know it's the last minute, but hey, it's a unique opportunity. The exchange rate has not been kind this year, and so this price point at the very end of the season is a magical little opportunity. I did have a few people reach out to me and say, hey, I would definitely do this trip if you did it in June at the same price point. Folks, I would love to do that too, but no, even if I had a magic wand made of money, that would not be possible. So this is a unique opportunity. If you've got the time and the space and the desire, jump on it. Reach out right away. Send me an email to danielle@danielleoterry.com to read all of the details about the trip, to see exactly what we're going to be doing, to look at the prices. Go to danielleoterry.com. And while you're there, you can read the Substack post that I wrote last week, which was really, I think, more of a rant than it was a post. I wrote it in like 15 minutes, and then I drank another cup of coffee, proofread it, sent it, and it's like the most clicked thing I have written in a long time. It's called Why You Should Never Ever Trust an Italian Website. And I guess it's getting a lot of clicks because it's true. So if you are doing research for an Italy trip right now and you are making value judgments, good or bad, based on Italian websites, stop and just go to danielleoterry.com and read that piece. If you're looking at a website and you're like, well, this vineyard looks lovely as compared to this other one that I heard about, which has a terrible website. Nope, that website, both of them, neither of those websites has anything to do with reality when it comes to Italy. All right, let's get back to the episode topic, which is why you should be thinking and dreaming of your trip before you start planning it. Now, we need to talk about this because there are things that happen in the thinking phase that are going to prevent a lot of stress when you bump up against practicalities. If you are focused on what it is you most want to see and do, you're not going to be overwhelmed with information in the same way. You won't feel paralyzed by the choices, and you won't be shocked by the prices, or maybe you will still be shocked by the prices. A lot of folks still assume that travel is cheap, like it was in the lira era, or that the US dollar is worth more than the euro. It's not. I wish it was. Those were fantastic days, but they're over. So, having a vision in mind when you bump up against the practicalities is going to set you up to create a beautiful trip instead of feeling disappointed before you've even booked a hotel. It's also going to prevent you from missing out on some really great opportunities. So, start your thinking and your dreaming with the question, why do I even want to go to Italy? And what do I want to feel on this trip? Do I want to be inspired, relaxed, connected? Here's a very important one. What is a comfortable, realistic budget? Mindful thinking leads to better pacing, logistics, and joy. So, first, let's talk about the boring stuff. Let's cover the basics. Number one, you are not going to overpack your itinerary. If you've got 10 days, which is the average trip, no more than 3 destinations. If you've been listening to me for a while, you've heard me say this many times before. Fight me. I'm not wrong. Okay? Now, high-speed trains are wonderful, but they don't go everywhere. They mostly connect the big cities. So if you want to go to the Amalfi Coast, for example, yes, you can take the fast train to Naples or to Salerno, which are cities on either side of the coast. However, you will then need to get on a ferry or book a very expensive car transfer and sit in a lot of traffic. Same goes for the Tuscan countryside. There are trains that connect some towns like Cortona, but if you want to see the countryside, you will definitely need to drive, and that's going to have to be worked into your plan. The point here is that overstuffed itineraries make travel stressful and fragile because a single late train can derail everything. Yes, pun intended. So pick 2 to 3 bases if you're visiting cities. Designate at least one smaller town or village, ideally by the sea or the mountains, because that's where you're going to find the best food, and this is where you will experience the rhythms of Italy and also enjoy some breathing room. The big city icons, Florence, Venice, and Rome, if that's where you want to go, those places are magical in the off season. So if that's what you really, really want to do, now you can more practically start thinking about February or early December. These are not places that you go for the weather, and they are much better when the crowds are thin, the hotel costs are significantly less. Now, the opposite is true for southern spots like Amalfi or Puglia, which pretty much close on November 1st. Sicily holds on to the nice weather well into October, November, and is more of a year-round destination. It's really its own world, but we've got to get to a podcast episode about Sicily soon. The point is, I want you to really think about where you want to go in relation to the time of year that you plan to travel. And then, you can reverse engineer it if you have a very specific destination in mind. Here's a little hot tip for you. If you really like hotels, I don't stay in a lot of fancy hotels because, it adds up quickly, but I do love a good hotel. The very last week of October is your window, especially in the south on the Amalfi Coast and in Puglia. The 5-star hotels cut their rates practically in half. There are few other guests, so the service is amazing, and that's really one of the main reasons to stay at a 5-star hotel. And it's another reason why I'm timing this trip with the end of October. I've actually got my eye on an Amalfi Coast hotel for just one night before the group trip will begin, because I've always wanted to stay in this hotel, and it's just bananas expensive. And I did have clients who stayed there a few years ago, and they said it was one of the best experiences of their travel lives. This was a couple who was very budget conscious, very deliberate about how they spent their money. But it was also an anniversary trip, and they decided to splurge and stay at this beautiful hotel on the Amalfi Coast. And they definitely don't regret it. And these are people who are budget conscious in every aspect of their life. So it really was moving outside of their comfort zone. Okay, now this might be the most important question that most people are going to skip when they hear it because they're going to think, yeah, whatever, I don't need to think about that. It sounds a little too woo-woo. But here we go. The question is, what inspires me? Now, don't answer that question with what you dislike. Don't say, well, I don't like museums or churches, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, whatever. But what do you love? Do you love shopping, nature, dogs? What is it that you really love and are inspired by? Because there is a place in Italy where you can experience that passion fully. And then I want you to decide how you want to feel on this trip. Do you want to be relaxed? Do you want to be challenged? Do you want to walk a pilgrimage route that has been traversed since the Middle Ages? Are you going on a multi-generational family trip and you really want to connect with your family and make memories? And then go another layer deeper. So say, for example, let's stay with the multi-generational example. You're the one who's organizing this trip. Do you want to feel like the cruise director or do you want to feel like a participant in that trip? I can tell you, I know exactly who this person is. Right now is thinking about a villa in Tuscany. You're going to be cruise director the entire time you're at that villa in Tuscany. Don't choose that. There are many better options. If your trip is with your significant other, do you want this trip to be romantic? Do you want it to be an adventure? Are you celebrating something special together? And when you return home after this trip, are you jumping right back into a stressful job? Or maybe you're retired. This is something that I've learned from having so many people who are retired on a trip where they say, I like chill out and play golf all the time. I want to go to Italy and pack my trip and see a lot of things and be kind of exhausted when I get back. That's fine. I've got like the next 6 months to hang around. So knowing how you want to feel is really going to help you make the best choices about how to spend your time and where to go because you can have so many wildly different experiences. Okay, so now that you've thought about how you want to feel, what inspires you, we're going to start to marry in some of the practical considerations. How am I going to travel? Am I willing to drive? How many destinations am I going to visit? And then I want you to consider these 4 things, which I consider to be the core ingredients of any good trip. Number 1 is plug in. This means seeing something iconic, something that expands your experience of the world, and you can do it with a tour or a lesson. Create some experience that really brings you to the heart of understanding something that you've never seen before. Italy has so many iconic sites, of course, the Colosseum, the Sistine Chapel, the Florence Duomo. If you're looking for ideas, look at the UNESCO list. Just a few weeks ago, I had an episode called What the Heck is a UNESCO World Heritage Site? Find some major iconic sites, something really key and important to history, and Italy has so many, and pick one and really plug in both before your trip and after to learn and expand your mind. The second ingredient is unplug. Arrange deliberate downtime. Now, maybe that's a wine tasting or visiting a spa or just sitting in a piazza with a sketchbook and committing to just sitting there for 2 hours without your phone to observe the world going by. Now, for my fellow spa people, Italy has absolutely amazing spas. There is an abundance of hot springs from the Dolomites all the way down to Sicily. And if you're like me and you love spas, this is definitely something that you want to incorporate for your unplugged category. Ingredient number 3, Indiana Jones moments. Seek out an adventure, ruins, archaeology, a dramatic hike, a boat ride. Have an Indiana Jones experience. And then finally, what do you love? Bring something that you already love and connect it to an Italian perspective. Cooking, fashion, spirituality. In an Italian context, you will experience something that you already love in a different way. And I guarantee it's going to be a more beautiful way because Italians know how to make everything beautiful. So now let's return to one more practical consideration, the one that nobody likes to talk about. But folks, be honest about your budget and don't postpone the budget conversation with your family or your significant other. This is what happens so often. A couple will come to me and listen, if I'm describing you, this is exactly how it happens for a lot of people. I'm not targeting you. It's really, really normal. I'm actually saying this to help you feel better, okay? This is what happens. Wife brings husband who's been told that they're going on a trip to Italy. But she wants him to enjoy it. She doesn't want to drag him behind her. So she invites him to the call, and I start asking some of these questions. What inspires you? What do you like to do? And husband usually looks terrified, and wife is really uncomfortable. And then when I bring up the conversation of budget, if husband is reluctant about the trip in the first place, this conversation gets really uncomfortable. Talking about money doesn't need to be a bucket of cold water. You just need to figure out what you're going to spend. Now, there's no average cost for a trip to Italy. Italy stretches from luxury to camping. You just have to prioritize. And some destinations are more expensive than others. But if, for example, your dream is Venice, which is a very expensive city, but you have a very limited budget, you should still go to Venice. But you'll go in the low season, and you'll devote all of your resources to a deep, focused experience of just Venice. And honestly, if you do that with a small budget, you will probably have a better time than if you had a really big budget to go to 3 different cities, because you're going to be very thoughtful and intentional about it. You're probably going to spend a lot of time planning it and, watching videos, reading books, and really making decisions and digging in to learn as much as you can, both ahead of the trip and during the trip. And then when you encounter these things, you're going to be so much more excited to see them. So even if your budget is limited, still think about where you want to go the most, which place inspires you, which things make you the most curious, and then focus your efforts accordingly. Focus your resources accordingly. Don't just wander into trip planning thinking that everything is going to be inexpensive. Italy has become much, much more expensive since the pandemic, as has everything. And a lot of people who may be returning to travel for the first time in, 20 or 30 years, like the Gen Xers who now have kids graduating college, Europe is not the same one that we left behind in the before sunrise generation. And the euro is much more expensive than the dollar right now. Don't feel bad about your budget. Pick a number that you're comfortable with. It's your trip, and you can figure out a way to make it work. Now, I also want to offer a note about airline prices, which is something people start to think about well ahead of time. People ask me all the time, points, times of day, clear the cache on your browser. I do this for a living, and I know that there are devoted points people out there. God bless you. I'm not in your ranks. Look for airline prices. When you find a price that works for you, buy it, and then move on with your life. That's my advice. I mean, if you are one of those points people, go for it. But when you do buy a flight, don't feel bad. Like, oh, I bought the flight on Tuesday and somebody told me that if I did it on Thursday when Mercury was in retrograde or whatever, just move on with your life. Airline prices change mostly based on fuel prices. So unless you've got a relative in Saudi Arabia who can give you the heads up, find a price that works for you, stick with it, move on. That's the end of this thinking, dreaming portion of trip planning. We will get to more practical considerations in a later episode. But here's one last note for my paid subscribers. Thursday, September 11th at 8 p.m. Eastern, I'm offering the next Destination Deep Dive, and it's about Matera. It's going to be on Zoom, and the replay will be available for 3 days after for paid subscribers only. After that, a more streamlined, evergreen presentation will be put up behind a paywall. And right now, the full Florence deep dive, which includes a 5-day itinerary that is extremely detailed, I made myself nuts putting this together, is already there behind the paywall. So if you come to the live event, you'll be able to ask all of your questions. And when I say deep dive, I mean it. It's an hour long. I go into depth about history, perceptions, challenges, advantages, where to eat, what to see. It's really meant to be a meaningful look and hopefully as inspiring as it is informative. So even if you have no intention of going to Matera, but you're curious about it, it's going to be interesting no matter what. All right, so I hope this episode has at least set you on the right track to practice thinking and not doing too much before you've really thought through your trip. Set your intentions. Trust that every decision built on an authentic feeling, will make for a trip that lingers in your heart and your memory. And if you want to come to Cilento with me on that research trip for that price that will never be repeated again, get in touch right away. Danielle at danielleoterry.com. I hope to finalize all of the details with the group by the end of the week. Thank you so much for listening.